He had a full day today with the new crowd in the Kremlin, and NBC's John Dancy is in our Moscow office tonight. John?
Tom Baker came here to see for himself who's in charge. By tonight, he should have no doubt.
The man striding through the golden door of Catherine's Hall this morning to meet Baker was Boris Yeltsin, president of the Russian Republic. A few months ago, this was Mikhail Gorbachev's exclusive turf, his reception room. Yeltsin demanded to use it today, a symbol of his ascendancy. But the meeting was about more than symbolism. The U.S. is worried about the 27,000 Soviet nuclear weapons scattered throughout 4 republics of the former Soviet Union. The U.S. wants a promise they will be kept in safe hands, away from terrorists and ethnic minorities. Baker appeared to get it when Yeltsin announced nuclear weapons would be brought under a single unified command.
We also agreed on strict expert control over possible delivery of nuclear weapons and technology to other countries and regions.
Yeltsin also promised Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Belarus will become non-nuclear republics. Only Russia will have nuclear weapons. This was Baker tonight.
I personally feel very reassured.
Also at the table today, as Baker met Yeltsin, was the Soviet defense minister, Yevgeny Shaposhnikov. Baker would not discuss his meeting with Shaposhnikov later, but American diplomats say privately the defense minister's presence with Yeltsin today signaled that the Red Army has now shifted its allegiance to Yeltsin. Baker held only a perfunctory meeting with Mikhail Gorbachev. The message clear: he is respected, but finished. Tonight, Baker and his old friend, Edward Shevardnadze, the Soviet foreign minister, held a poignant news conference. Without either man saying so, it had about it the sadness of farewell.
So the U.S. has the assurances it wanted, but so far they're only assurances. Yeltsin still has to deliver on them. Tom?
Thank you, John Dancy. And despite those Yeltsin promises today, the situation remains volatile. One man watching all of this closely is Sam Nunn, who's the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Senator Nunn, should the United States be insisting to Yeltsin now that we have to have monitoring devices for the command and control of those nuclear weapons in Russia and the destruction in the outlying republics?
Tom, I think we ought to be taking them up on their offer to assist them in storing, transporting, and beginning to dismantle the tactical nuclear missiles. The strategic nuclear missiles are subject to the arms control agreements, and they will be reduced. But the tactical missiles are those that could easily be put in hands of terrorist groups. But beyond that, I think that the assurances that Baker got today are comforting. But we've never had a situation, Tom, where we had unemployed people who know how to make nuclear weapons. We've never had a situation where we have military people that have possession of, let's say, conventional missiles that can knock down an airplane, that have no housing for their families. So this is unprecedented, and I think it's going to be a lot in terms of challenge in terms of implementation.
Will this affect the United States status of its alert around the world in terms of a possibility of a nuclear attack of some kind?
No, I don't think so. I think the chances of a deliberate nuclear attack on the United States are less than they've ever been, certainly since World War II. But I think the chance of some kind of accident or some kind of proliferation of weapons or knowledge from the scientific community that are struggling to find income and from the military community that are struggling to find housing for their own families, I think that danger has gone up.
Thank you very much, Senator Sam Nunn, Democrat of Georgia, chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. And there was a historic vote in the United Nations today. The General Assembly finally overturned a 1975 resolution that compared racism to Zionism. That's the ideology that led to the birth of Israel. As NBC's John Cochran tells us tonight, this vote was an important part of the president's Middle East policy. John?
Tom, the vote today falls right in with the president's hope that the UN can effectively work for peace everywhere, even the Mideast. Israeli diplomats had reason to celebrate. Until today, they had to argue their case before an assembly which had condemned them as racists. The condemnation of Zionism came 2 years after Israel won a close victory in the 1973 war. Arabs, beaten on the field of battle, then looked for diplomatic victories and got them at the UN when the old Soviet bloc and Third World countries voted to equate Zionism with racism. But by last fall, President Bush knew Moscow's attitude had softened, and he called on the UN to repeal the resolution.
To equate Zionism with racism is to reject Israel itself, a member of good standing of the United Nations.
Today, by an overwhelming vote of 111 to 25, the General Assembly bought the American argument.
It is more than time to consign one of the last relics of the Cold War to the dustbin of history.
At the stalled Mideast peace talks in Washington, Palestinians complained, as expected.
In our opinion, the practices of the Zionist movement against my people under occupation is the highest form of racism and terrorism.
But privately, even some Arab diplomats say today's vote could be helpful if it convinces Israel that the UN is no longer a rigged jury. Tom?
Thanks very much, John Cochran at the White House tonight. And when Nightly News continues in a moment, on the home front, the homeless, a big problem getting bigger. And tonight's In the 90s, luxury homes for the personally bankrupt. This is a loophole letting the rich get away with it.
Power. Applied intelligently, its effects are magnificent. Witness the Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, powered by the world's largest 24-valve V6 engine and an electronic transmission. It's a car designed to provide a more intelligent standard of performance, measured not simply in miles per hour, but by a slightly different gauge, miles per gallon. Oldsmobile, the power of intelligent engineering.
This holiday, save an arm and a leg with Pam. Pam no-stick cooking spray helps keep food from sticking.
Oh!
Don't go to pieces. Get Pam.
Now you don't need a prescription to get prescription strength medicine for itches and rashes. Introducing new Maximum Strength Cord-Aid. Now with twice the healing medicine. New Maximum Strength Cord-Aid. Prescription strength without a prescription.
America's homeless situation is going from bad to worse. Hard times are pushing more people and more families out onto the streets. That from a U.S. Conference of Mayors report out today, and NBC's Robert Hager has details tonight.
In Chicago, a makeshift fire warms those waiting in a food line. In Washington, at the House of Ruth today, homeless women pass the time, reading, crocheting, faces of despair. In its annual survey of cities, the Mayor's Conference reported a 26% increase in requests for free meals in 1991 and a 16% increase in requests for shelter. Boston's Mayor Raymond Flynn says the problem is much worse, in part because of the recession.
How many times can we all turn a blind eye to the poverty and hunger and homelessness that is taking place in America's streets and sidewalks and doors and grates and parks and benches?
Jamie from New York.
You just have problems with everything, food and shelter and clothing.
LaShawn Evans in Washington, 6 months pregnant and 3 months in a shelter.
It's like home, but it's not home to me because this is not the way I was lived and brought up.
What we're finding now that we hadn't found previously would be young homeless families on the street at night.
The mayor's survey finds families with children make up 1/3 of those in shelters and 2/3 of those in soup kitchens. But with 30% of the homeless mentally ill and 40% alcohol or drug abusers, backlash is inevitable. St. Paul's Mayor James Scheibel.
But people are frustrated, and then people look for a scapegoat.
In picturesque Santa Monica, California, that city's liberal policy toward the homeless has caused it to be overrun. The city council votes tomorrow on whether to crack down against what some residents are calling Skid Row by the sea. But the U.S. Conference of Mayors calls on the nation to show compassion and says for the first time ever, all the cities it surveyed expect demand for food and shelter to grow even greater in the coming year. And expect that inevitably, many will have to be turned away. Robert Hager, NBC News, Washington.
And of course, the economy will be a key issue in the presidential campaign just now getting underway. The Democratic contenders fired some opening rounds Sunday night in a nationally televised debate here on NBC. It was the first of the season, and NBC's Andrea Mitchell has the highlights.
For many Americans, it was the first glimpse of the 6 Democrats. What they saw was a spirited argument, sometimes more amongst themselves than against the president, on middle-class tax cuts.
We don't get one iota closer to competing with Japan with a middle-class tax cut.
You can't have consumer confidence restored until there's consumer cash. In the 80s, middle-class incomes went down, middle-class taxes went up.
Everyone's talking about a tax break for middle class, and that's what they're talking about, $1 a day. $1 a day for a family.
On massive aid to the Soviet republics.
Well, absolutely not. I'm all in favor of humanitarian aid for medicine, for example, to get them the medicine.
If we get them through the winter and we nourish democracy and the growth of a market economy, we'll generate American jobs.
Frequently citing his own Vietnam War experience, Kerry said George Bush was too timid about helping the Soviet republics, too aggressive towards Saddam Hussein.
And when Secretary of State Baker tried to clarify what it was all about in November 1990, saying it was jobs, 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 I didn't believe that. And if it was true, where are these jobs?
Marching to his own drummer, Jerry Brown at one point read a newspaper. He spent most of the evening accusing the others of being owned by special interests.
Try to follow the money, and then you'll find what the problem is.
You seem to be saying that I'm somehow bought and paid for. Is that what you're saying? Are you saying that I'm bought and paid for?
I'm saying this system.
Are you saying that I'm bought and paid for?
I'm saying you're part of a system that is bought and paid for.
By punching back, Kerry energized his campaign. Clinton avoided any mistakes. They all ignored the man who wasn't there.
We'll know by the end of the week pretty much whether it's possible to make the New Hampshire primary. I can't tell you because I don't know yet what the condition is going to be with the budget.
When asked who won, the president pointed to himself. But the race is still very early. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Washington.
No debate about the stock market tonight. It was up a bit today in active trading.
Late one night, the city slept. She dropped into a local night spot. She was not easily satisfied. Then, exactly what she was looking for. Isotona gloves. People can't wait to get their hands on them.
This man's incredibly close, comfortable shave comes from the Norelco razor. But to see how he got it, we have to go back to when he began shaving. Not just above the skin, but below it. Here, our patented lift and cut system lifts the hair so when it's cut, it can actually drop below skin level without the blades even touching your face. Try it, and you'll keep going back to Norelco for a perfect shave. Norelco, we make close, comfortable.
This Christmas, you can send a beautiful gift without ever having to leave home. The FTD Season's Greetings Bouquet. It's highly recommended by the one big guy who should know.
Sure, plums are wonderful, but did you know ounce for ounce you get more vitamins and minerals after plums become prunes?
Sweet, delicious California prunes. Find out how good they really are.
Since a cough can be extra annoying at night, doctor it with Robitussin.
That should do it.
Robitussin, recommended by more doctors, pharmacists, and Dr. Mom.
Our daily difference now, in the 90s, hard economic times mean more people than ever before are going bust. Personal bankruptcies are booming, almost tripled from a decade ago. But in some states, a loophole for the rich is taking the sting out of going broke. For owners of pricey homes in Florida and Texas, declaring bankruptcy doesn't mean having to sell off a mansion to pay creditors. Take a look at this luxury home in Palm Beach, Florida. Purchased last year for $2.5 million. That was part of a $5 million buying spree that also netted 2 homes across the street. The buyer, this man, Benjamin Sisti, a Connecticut real estate baron. His wife actually made the purchases right after the Sistis declared themselves Florida residents. Florida offered the Sistis more than just a change in climate. It offered them safe haven from Connecticut's bankruptcy laws, where their mansion was seized by a bank.
This video presentation was produced by Colonial Realty.
A short time later, the Sistis and Sistis company, Colonial Realty, were forced into bankruptcy. That left thousands of investors in trouble. Many had their life savings in Sistis projects. For his part, Benjamin Sisti insisted there was nothing wrong with his last-minute purchase of the Florida homes.
There was no partnership money used. There was no investor money used. There was no colonial money used.
In Texas, they used the comforting phrase homestead in the bankruptcy loophole. Houston businessman Mel Powers was living in the penthouse of this skyscraper when he went bankrupt. Most of his creditors were banks. But Powers, under Texas law, was able to keep the entire building, then assessed at almost $70 million, from the banks.
Everybody is entitled to a place to live in the state of Texas, and that just happened to be my home.
But is that really fair? Shouldn't there be a cap of some kind on the homestead exemption? You could have given up your claim on that place and moved out to a nice little $250,000 tract home in the suburbs and been perfectly comfortable.
You have a home that you live in, and everybody has a home that they put their life's blood in. My life's blood happened to be in that home.
In Florida, even a giant horse ranch was protected by the state's bankruptcy laws. A move to change those laws in the state legislature didn't get out of committee.
We're talking about the people that, the many, many people that really have used that homestead exemption as a tax shelter and that are worth millions and millions of dollars.
What you're saying is that the taxpayers are, in effect, financing the lavish lifestyle of somebody who went wild and took big risk and lost it all, but the taxpayers prop them up in the end.
That's right. And what has happened now is the fact that people have abused that and perverted that into making all of these shelters for their own financial gain.
Diamond. The losers are the people who loan money to the high rollers, people like Vito Santasierra. A pawnbroker, he put $25,000 into Benjamin Sisti's real estate company. Gone forever, he says.